Growing up among the rolling green hills of Vermont meant that I spent a lot of time outdoors. Even though I lived in a capital city, my choice of activities had always been camping and hiking and swimming. Most of my outdoor memories are pretty happy, but there was one experience that I had that made me almost never go camping again. So my cousin Corey and I were on a summer vacation from high school, and we begged my mum to take us to our favorite campground for a few days. The next afternoon, we arrived at Lake Elmore State Park, where a ranger gave us a map with available sites circled on it, and after checking them all out, we settled on a lean-to called Ash. All of the lean-to sites at this park are named after trees, with ash and juniper always being our preferences since they were a little more private than some of the other sites. My family had been going to Lake Elmore since before I was born pretty much, and my mum and I both knew the grounds very well. Our first night was uneventful, since it was the middle of the week and the park was almost deserted, which meant that Corey and I never had to wait for paddle boats to become available, and we got Prime Lake beach boats without having to get there early in the morning. Honestly, the trip was pretty perfect. That is, until the second night. My mum wanted to go home on the second day to check on my brother Nate, who hadn't wanted to come with us, so after dinner she left. We knew that she wouldn't be back until around midnight, so we entertained ourselves by making s'mores and playing card games. After a while, we got restless and decided to walk down to the lake. From the bulk of the sites, the lake is about a 10-minute walk, I think, and Mount Elmore, which looms over the lake, is always beautiful at sunset. We made it down to the lakeshore just fine, and we enjoyed the cool sensation of wet sand squishing between our toes as we built a sandcastle. The sun was beginning to set in earnest, and we hadn't brought any light down with us, so we headed back to the site to grab one. I was ready to head back to the lake, but Corey suggested that we walk the trail that goes to the old fire tower at the top of Mount Elmore instead. I agreed, and we made our way to the outskirts of the campground where the trail started. An hour or so went by as we walked and talked, just enjoying the refreshing night air. The lantern gave us enough light that we didn't feel nervous, and we just made sure not to go off trail. There was only one path for most of the trek, so it was pretty easy to follow anyway. At one point, a herd of deer came bounding out of the woods near us, their appearance so sudden that I nearly dropped the lantern. Corey, now a bit spooked, asked if we would head back to camp. I wasn't really ready to, but I wanted him to be comfortable, so I agreed. We'd been walking for about 5 minutes when we heard someone in the woods off to our right. It was clearly a person, since their rhythmic footsteps clearly didn't sound like an animal. It wasn't unusual for rangers to patrol the trails even at night, and if one of them had seen us, they were probably checking to make sure that we weren't doing anything illegal or destructive. We waited for them to appear, but the steps had stopped and no one entered the circle of light that we were in. After a minute, Corey called out a tentative, hello? His voice quivering slightly. I thought it was a little odd that we couldn't see a flashlight by then, but I shrugged it off and just kept walking. If some weirdo wanted to be creeping around in the woods at 10 p.m. without a light, then that was their business, not mine. It was probably someone just sneaking away from their family to smoke or drink or something, which could easily explain why they weren't coming forward or greeting us. As we walked, I noticed that since the appearance of the deer, the woods had seemed oddly silent. I can admit, too, that by then, I was glad that we were heading back to camp. We were about halfway down the trail when a voice called out to us, which we instantly knew was my mum's. The sound had come from behind us, though, and Corey and I spun around in unison. I shouted out a greeting, but we didn't get a response. Corey looked at me, concern clearly on his face. It made sense that it had been my mum in the woods, probably trying to get us back for all the pranks that we'd pulled over the years, but it was weird that she suddenly just wasn't responding after just having called to us. We waited for several minutes, occasionally calling out to her. I started to get mad because by then her little prank just wasn't funny anymore, and I was becoming unnerved. A few minutes went by, and I was finally fed up. So I grabbed Corey by the elbow and began to march back to camp, grumbling about annoying mothers and stupid pranks. Corey hadn't said a word, but I noticed him watching the woods around us carefully. As we reached the last 10-minute stretch of the trail, my mother's voice once again rang out behind us. It sounded strange though, and I immediately thought that she might be hurt. I spun around, swinging the lantern, casting distorted shadows. I couldn't see anything but trees, and I didn't hear anyone moving around. And at this point, I was slowly becoming scared, and I just wanted to get back to the safety of the campfire. But my attention was drawn to the lantern light reflecting off of something in a bush nearby. It was a pair of green eyes, but to my confusion, they were about 8 feet off the ground. No animal around here could be standing that tall, even on the back legs. So I said, "Yo, what the hell is that, dude?" Corey echoed my confusion, and we were both just staring at this towering shadow that neither of us dared to move around. And after a moment, it stepped towards us, and our feeble hope that it was just a deer on its back legs was smashed. To this day, we still don't know exactly what we saw, but the word goatman is the best way that I have of describing it. A pair of woolly legs and a fuzzy abdomen gave way to smooth humanoid chest and arms. The face was horrifying, a mix of goat and man that I still can't get out of my brain. I watched as it opened its mouth, my mother's voice giving a cheery-sounding hello coming out of the creature, but it was warped and too deep.
"Hi, baby girl. Good morning, honey."
To this day, I don't remember getting back to the campsite. All I remember is screaming and running as fast as I could away from the creature, but that's it. I don't know if it followed us or tried to communicate further, and I'm not sure that I want to know, to be honest. We never did tell my mum or the park rangers about our encounter. We figured that they would tell us that we were just crazy or chalk our experience up to the use of recreational substances, so it just honestly wasn't worth the hassle. Corey and I have both returned to Elmore since then, but neither of us have ever seen anything like that again. I often wondered, though, if we just imagined the whole thing, or if it was just some sort of weird dream. But people just don't usually share the exact same dream, right? So Facebook memories reminded me today of something that I'd chosen to forget. My wife was working for years at a vet tech at night on the weekends. Every Friday and Saturday night, I would take care of my 2 kids by myself, and after they went down, I would either play video games for a couple of hours or have some friends over for D&D. So 3 years ago, I had gotten to bed late and was just setting down around 2:30 a.m. My wife usually got home at around 3:45 a.m., I'd say, but occasionally could get off a bit earlier too. So we had video baby monitors at the time, as my daughter, 2, slept in a room across the hall from us, but my son, 4, was in the only other bedroom in the basement level. As I was laying there in the dark, I heard the sound of my wife talking to my son sweetly over the baby monitor. I reached over and turned on the screen and saw what looked like her with her back to the camera, talking to him, and him moving around on the floor and talking to her. I smiled, turned off the screen, and lay there silently waiting for my wife to come to bed. Maybe 5 or 10 minutes tops went by, and I didn't hear her talking to him anymore, but she just never came up. And it was at this point that I suddenly got a feeling of just dread. I picked up my phone and checked her location, and it was still at work. I immediately texted her and jumped out of bed to check the house and the kids. My daughter was sound asleep undisturbed. All doors and windows were shut and locked securely, and the alarm was armed. My son was awake though, which was odd since it was almost 3 o'clock in the morning now. I asked him if Mummy had been in his room, and he said no. I asked him who that was talking to him, and he said, "I don't know, some kind of animal maybe. It was trying to play tricks on him." It was at this point that I took him to bed with me and left all the lights on until my wife got home, too scared to go back to sleep. After that, I completely forgot about it, as that was the only eerie thing to ever happen to me in that house until I saw it on my Facebook memories today. It still freaks me out a bit to think about it, and I hope to be able to put it out of my mind for at least another year now, because it was creepy as hell. I've had multiple occurrences with the paranormal throughout my life, but I've had something evil following me for years now. I'll try to share all of these stories eventually because there's so many incidences, but here's my scariest one in the house that I'm currently in. So about 7 years ago, my best friend and I were in my room having a little sleepover as our usual weekends went, nothing different. And like I said, this obviously wasn't my first experience with anything paranormal, but it was my first time experiencing anything evil and really vicious like this. So it was around 2:30 in the morning, and we were listening to music and drawing when I noticed that my friend's bra was moving rapidly on my door handle. It was fall, so we didn't have the AC on, and we didn't have a heater on either. And my friend and I noticed at the same time, and as we look at each other in confusion, a giant gust of wind just filled the room. My friend ran into the bed as fast as she could, as she was originally sitting on the floor, and as she was running, something had pushed me into the wall, knocking the wind out of me. It felt like minutes of me choking and struggling before finally it let go, but the minute I felt whatever it was release, I got up and grabbed my friend who was frozen with fear, and we just ran as fast as we could out of the room and ran to my mum's bedroom. She, of course, didn't believe us and said that it was our imaginations and calmed us down, but while walking us back to the room, that's when we all noticed this awful smell of just rotting eggs. She was skeptical, but blessed my room with holy water after this. We had someone from the Vatican come over, and we all slept together in the living room for the rest of the night. The next morning, I woke up to my chest just hurting and aching. I pulled off my shirt in the shower and noticed giant bruises just all over my chest where I was pushed. And after that, I refused to sleep in my room for a month, and I refused to go in there without my mum, because it still terrifies me, even thinking about it. This is an experience that I had when I was 7 years old, and is possibly the scariest and most real encounter that I've had to this day, and I've had a fair few interactions. So my house when I was 7 was a 3-story house, with the top floor only consisting of one bedroom, right above mine on the second floor. I'm an only child, so would have to entertain myself, which involved bringing certain toys to the upstairs room. The first time I ever stepped foot into this room, too, it just felt really strange. I would instantly get goosebumps and feel like I was just being watched by something. As I was young, though, I would just ignore it until I just got too uncomfortable and would go back downstairs. I would go up when friends were around and wanted some privacy from the adults. The experience never changed, though. I would also sleep with a stuffed animal, and a few months in, I would wake up to my stuffed animal propped up in the corner of my room, always facing me as well, always sitting upright. As I was so young, I didn't have a concept or even know what a paranormal thing was, so I just thought my parents would be taking it off me and placing it there or something, after waking me up for school. However, this started to happen much more frequently, to the point where I wouldn't sleep with that specific toy, my favorite that kept getting moved. But no matter where I put it in my room, at some point in the morning in the future, it would always be in the same place, propped up, just staring at me. Eventually, I got creeped out enough that I just got rid of that toy, but that was when things got really weird. So one night, I wake up to a massive bang at like 2 in the morning, like something hitting the floor, but when I woke up, it's dead silent and pitch black with my face facing the door. But even in the pitch black, I could make out a small creature come into my room. It was a bald outline of a creature with pointy ears and claws, but no shadow or distinct features, just the most intense darkness that I'd ever seen. It turns its head at me, and I blink. It disappears and reappears, clutching my backpack hanging on the other side of the room. It was about the same size as it, too. The same thing happens again. Its head does a slow 180 turn and then just stares at me. I blink and it reappears next to my bed in an instant, but this time it's on the other side. On this side of my bed was my computer, an old one at the time with a big back to the screen. It was attached to an extension cord that had a glowing red light. With another blink, the creature vanished, but the extension cord started to turn on and off rapidly. I had been slowly rolling around every time the creature moved. After this, I rolled back to face the other side of my bed, fearing that whatever this thing was had gone under my bed and was about to come out the other side. But there was nothing. I laid there for what felt like hours, absolutely gripped with fear until I just fell asleep from exhaustion. In the morning, I passed off the event as just being a nightmare and proceeded to do my usual routine of getting out of bed and going onto my computer to play games. I turn it on and it's just static, like the same as when a TV is stuck between channels. My uncle actually fixes computers for a living and he came in to inspect it, only to find something in it, and I'm no expert, but it had been burned or been destroyed or something. The computer was completely unfixable and had to be thrown out after that. And after that experience, I moved all my toys and stuffed animals into the room next to me that was also empty. Soon enough, this room started to display the same tendencies as the room above me had. Fortunately, after this was done, stuff stopped happening to me. And after that day, I never felt anything weird unless I went into the room next to me. This happened 12 years ago, but no one, literally no one except me, knows about it because I've always put science before anything else, religions, paranormal ideas, and so on, and neither I know if I can believe what I experienced or if it was all just a matter of the wrong perceptions. I'll share with you guys exactly how it happened though, because, well, I'm afraid my feelings could distort my ability to write correctly. So it's late July and I'm going on vacation with Jane. Luckily, we live in a place, southeast coast of Italy, that literally has hundreds of choices. From country to sea, everything is great here and still not contaminated by the human touch. Not everything, at least. So we decide to rent a villa with direct access to the beach. We pack our things and drive to the place, and the villa is on 3 levels. The highest has a little parking spot with a space for 2 cars. The middle one has the house, and the lowest one has a garden with many vegetables and fruits ready to be harvested, and the gate to the beach. There's no beach, to be honest, though. Through the gate, you can directly access a cliff that slowly sinks into the sea. The entire property is surrounded by a series of tall trees and very high grass of some sort. They're the only things that divide the villa from the properties near it, too. So as soon as we arrive, I'm caught by the calmness of the place. A very gentle breeze moves leaves all around, and the near sound of the sea contributes to make everything kind of soft. But fast forwarding to the first mystery of the night, it's almost midnight and we're back from a disco. We open the front door and close it behind us. This is the moment too that I realize that the lock is damaged and the door can't be closed properly. Someone from the outside could easily enter the apartment, but I didn't pay attention to it when we arrived, so maybe it was damaged from the beginning. I promptly put a heavy table behind the door to block it, and then I go to sleep. After an entire day on the beach and a quick shower, it's already 10 p.m. and we're having a barbecue. Just me and Jane relaxing on the porch. While I'm taking care of the barbecue, I start hearing some rustling, and it's a normal thing to hear while being in the middle of a mini forest, but something just isn't quite normal about it. The rustle doesn't follow the wind, and a couple of times I swear to hear it even with no wind at all. So I start looking around. Maybe someone noticed 2 young people and decided to follow them. I'm starting to pay attention at the surroundings, trying to check out every spot with my eyes without saying anything to Jane because it'd be useless to warn her without a reason. And after maybe an hour or so, the encounter happens. So I'm in the garden taking 2 lemons and some tomatoes, and I clearly hear the rustling of dry leaves on the ground being stepped on. I slowly take some steps back without losing eyesight on the place that I believe the rustling is coming from. Jane calls me, and I turn my head to answer and turn back just to see what I'll never forget. The lower part of the body of something that was clearly moving from a bush to another and instantly freezed when I turned my eyes onto it. It's a skinny body with a very long leg, a humanoid in nature, and the other one is ahead of it, in the classic pose of someone who's walking. I obviously start panicking and decide that it's better to leave the house. The dinner was almost over anyway, so I take it as an excuse to go out and get some ice cream. A couple of hours later, after we're back, luckily enough it's the last day, and in the morning we have our breakfast and put our clothes on. But while putting my t-shirt on, I feel something weird on the back of my neck. Something that I've never had before until this morning. Fast forward to a couple of months and many medical checkups after, and a clinic decides to open me up and take a portion of the tissue of the thing at the base of my neck and do a histological examination just to discover that it's a rare, and I mean really rare, type of cancer. Some sort of modification of an already rare female cancer. And I'm a young male, mind you. Today, after 12 years, I've just accepted that it's a part of my body now, even if I'm under continuous checkups and chemo. But the turn of events that led to discover this just all seem too coincidental, considering too that this type of cancer takes decades to move or grow on its own, unless provoked by a huge physical shock like a muscle being literally torn apart or something. And I definitely didn't have any accident or the like before that morning.